We're not sponsors of terrorism. We don't support terrorism. We condemn terrorism in all forms and formats. So in that way, I think we stand behind India. The Gorkha Regiment, I think, is down almost like 15,000. If what they're saying in the Indian media is correct, the Indian threat landscape is massive. You need the Indian war theater is very human intensive, meaning it requires a lot of manpower. And when you don't have the best manpower, it basically increases your vulnerability.
You're watching The Gist on StratNews Global. I'm Ramananda Sengupta. Our very, very special guest today is Chiran Jung Thapa, security specialist from Nepal with a background in national security and counterterrorism, as well as crisis management. He was also a speaker from Nepal at the First Chanakya Defence Dialogue in 2023, where his rather outspoken speech caused a bit of a stir. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a delight to have you with us this time. And I look forward to an interesting conversation.
Thank you, Ramanandaji. It's really good to see you after 2 years, I guess.
Yes, it's been a long time, but out of sight doesn't mean out of mind. I guess you know why we sort of wanted to have this discussion. One is I wanted to get Nepal's views on what the Pahalgam incident is all about, and after that we'll do a bit of thing about the bilateral relationship, which by all accounts is a bit sticky right now. So if we take it from the Pahalgam incident, what is the sort of Nepali view on what went down?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to your show. Second, let me begin with a disclaimer. Whatever I'm going to say here today are, of course, my own personal views. I don't represent any groups or organizations.
Absolutely.
So these are my personal views. Third, I want to express my heartfelt condolences to all the victims and their families that lost lives or injured in that dastardly attack. So, as you know, one of our nationals also died during that attack. So we mourn collectively with India. We stand behind India in this grief. We mourn alongside you guys. So I think that's sort of the national sentiment. It's a very sad, unfortunate, very difficult moment for both the countries, I guess. Losing nationals is not a good thing on either side. But let me put on my analyst hat, I guess, and look at it from a very technical point of view in terms of what has happened. So from a counterterrorism point of view, I would look at the 3 T's. The targets, the timing, and the tactics. So targets, as you know, widely discussed, all men this time. There were women and children, but they were spared deliberately. The target was in a very isolated area, I guess, a few hours walking distance from the road, very difficult for the security forces to get to. It's what we call a soft target, I guess, because there's no security present there. So timing is also very interesting because this comes exactly about a month after what happened in Pakistan, in Balochistan. So you have to take that into consideration as well. So in Balochistan on March 11th, there was a major, unprecedented terrorist attack by the Balochistan Liberation Army, where they hijacked a train hijacking. And interestingly, this was on March 11th, because you have to look at the details. This was on March 11th, and the incident in Pahalgam took place on April 22nd. So 11, it's the double of 11, which is 22, right? there's always a significance there. There are always these like little nuances that you need to pick up. In the Balochistan attack, from the reports, there were 26 people that died, innocent civilians that died. The number was put at 26, although I think it's a lot higher in terms of the security forces, the attackers that died. I think the number is a lot higher, but in terms of the innocent civilians, it's 26. That's the number. Interestingly, the number in Pahalgam attack is also 26. I don't know whether it's a mere coincidence, but there is a parallel. As you know, the Pakistani government blamed India for it, saying that India sponsored it at that time. They didn't say much more than that in terms of providing evidence or whatever. But there was an allegation that was leveled against India at that time. Now let's move forward. A month later, a similar incident happens in Pahalgam, and the Indian government has leveled the blame against Pakistan and Pakistan-based terror groups. So in terms of the timing, you have to look at the timing as well. The other interesting aspects about the timing is it was a time when the Vice President J.D. Vance was in town in India. And it was a time when the Prime Minister of India was in Saudi Arabia, in Jeddah, which is a big financial hub. They were going to make major deals. A lot was about to happen. And as we know, the Saudis and the Pakistanis have always had a good relationship. They've tried to maintain that Islamic relationship. So it comes at that time as well. So timing is of essence as well. And it also comes at a time when a week before, about a week or 10 days before this incident, I think the Home Minister had made a very interesting remark about how, Jammu and Kashmir was devoid of I think he used the word, all the forces that were inimical to the Indian interest have been crippled or somewhere along the lines. So it comes somewhere, 6 or 7 days after that. And it also comes right after, General Asif Munir's speech, the speech that basically talks about the two nation state, talks about how Kashmir is their jugular vein, right? And a lot of people decoding that as maybe the trigger to the incident. So there are a lot of things in terms of timing. Tactics. So let's look at tactics a little bit. Tactics, gunmen came, started asking people whether you're Hindu or Muslim, and then started shooting people, right? So in terrorism, the tactics also matters, like all the way from using a knife to a gun or using explosives. Now, even I think last week we had a ramming in Canada as well, using a vehicle to kill people, right? So if you look at the tactics, that is also quite significant. I mean, so the three T's, I look at it, the three T's. So it's quite interesting and unprecedented, because this is perhaps the first time where the terrorists have only targeted men. Like they have separated the women and the children. I mean, they've made a distinction, and they've also made a distinction based on religion, right? Asking people and then killing them, saying if you are Hindu, then they started shooting. So I think the nuances are in those three.
So that's the thing. But I want to know, what does Nepal sort of feel about it? Do they believe Pakistan is to blame? Do they think it's a false flag thing, like what the Pakistanis are saying? Or is there somebody Nepal believes? Nepal, as in the common Nepalese.
Yeah. So
what is?
I will give you a few things. What has happened right after the incident? There have been protests in front of the Pakistani embassy, and also, these are protests that actually happened in Kathmandu. So there's a group that went and protested against the killing of an innocent Nepali civilian.
Mhm.
The other thing is the false flag. I think there are people that do believe it's a false flag based on certain assumptions that they've made, which are, it comes at a time when there's a lot of turmoil in the world. There's a lot of turmoil even in the ruling alliance, especially when the Bihar elections are coming up.
Right.
Narendra Modi and Amit Shah against certain factions within the BJP as well. The selection of the BJP leader, the next BJP leadership, or even the prime ministership, Mohan Bhagwat's statements. So it comes along that periphery. And there are some people that
Mhm.
also look back to the Pulwama attack, because when
Right.
Pulwama happened, I don't think there has been an investigation underway, like a good investigation underway, or has it? The findings have been disclosed. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't say the entire Nepal is on like one side or the other. I think it's a mix. And there are also those people that actually don't care. I mean, they looked at it. I mean, they just moved on. Oh, there was a terrorist attack. They just moved on. They were sad because some Nepali lost life, but then life moves on. So it's an eclectic mix. I think
Right.
I wouldn't say there's an overwhelming mix of this or the other.
Mhm.
But
But you did
from I think
mention that. Sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. No, I was saying that
So
you did mention that Nepal stood behind India because, I mean, along with the fact that there was a Nepali who died,
yeah,
um, but that's perhaps a very positive thing in one way because relationships haven't been all that great between us so far for a couple of years. Or am I sort of
yeah.
getting it wrong?
No, I think that was my sort of outlook, because Nepal will definitely be behind India in this, because a terrorist attack, irrespective of whoever perpetrates it and whoever is the victim, I think Nepal has to stand behind that. We're not sponsors of terrorism. We don't support terrorism. We condemn terrorism in all forms and formats. So in that way, I think we stand behind India. The second part of it is also, we have to be very concerned as Nepalese nationals, or as the Nepalese state has to be always extremely, extremely cautious and concerned about Indian security, because we're the only country that has an open border with India. So any threat that can emanate from this side of the border towards India is not good for our bilateral relationship or for the security environment, right? So immediately after this incident, Nepal already goes on high alert. That's a standard protocol, because along the borders, there's a better monitoring. Vigilance is stepped up at the airports. I mean, if you saw the airports in the last couple of days, I mean, it's been quite chaotic, because the level of security has been ramped up as a
Hmm.
result of Belgaum attack, thinking that maybe if there are elements that want to inflict harm upon India, then if they want to do it through the Nepalese territory, we have to be cautious and we have to be very concerned. So, in that manner, I think Nepal will be, or will stand behind India to ensure that there's no harm or no threat that emanates from within our borders.
Right. So that part is there. But overall, I mean, like I said, the relationship has been a bit rocky. How would you like to put
Yes.
it right now? I mean, where do you think we are headed? Where exactly are the stumbling blocks?
I mean, it has a long history. I mean, if we start talking, I don't think even 2 or 3 hours will be enough. But there are
No, I
few.
agree. But if you could sort of give me bullet points,
Yeah,
because even
I'll.
now,
Sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
I'll just
Sorry.
finish. Hmm. That even now, Nepal itself has been going through a bit of a political flux. I mean, over the last ever since the monarchy was abolished. In fact, like we were talking earlier, there's now a call for the return of the monarchy. So at a time when there's domestic flux, to also have flux with a neighbor is not a comfortable thing, I suppose.
Yes. So the way I would describe India-Nepal relation, I think it's not one-stranded; it's multi-stranded, right? So there are economic ties, there are social ties, there are religious ties, uh, there is a military bond like no other. So whenever there's a strain in the relationship, if one strain breaks, I think the other strains come up so quickly, try to ensure that the bond doesn't break. So I see it in that manner. For example, let's go back to 2015 when there was a blockade. We our relationships hit rock bottom at that point. But it was the military from both sides that came forward, stepped forward, and mended the ties. Right, the two chiefs, especially General Rajendra Chetri and God, I forget the name of the chief on the other side, Dalvir Singh. Right, so they were towering figures at that time that brought us back together. There are a lot of irritants. There are a lot of unresolved issues that remain between the two countries. But the bond, I think, still continues because it's the best way to explain it. The India-Nepal relationship is an oxymoron, I think. When you say the relationship is bad, there's also quite a bit of trust. In principle, policy, and practice, there are differences. Whatever you pronounce, whatever you practice, and whatever is in principle or policy do not always corroborate. For example, Nepal pegs its currency to the Indian currency, right? So there is a level of trust that level of linkage. My currency is pegged to your currency. Second, borders, right? We have we trust each other so much that we have open borders. So each of us can go or cross the borders. There's that level of trust. Now, the other level of trust, let me explain, is the security aspect of it. Indian dispensation since 1947 has trusted Nepalese nationals to guard their frontiers for the last 75 years in the form of Gorkha regiments, right? That's the largest infantry regiment. Right? So if there was no trust, why would you bring in a foreign national or large number of foreign nationals to, come and stand in your border to protect every inch of Indian territory? Now, there was this one incident that I always recall. It's Prime Minister Modi's the Chowkidar theme. I'm the Chowkidar of India, sort of thing. And there was this tweet by, I think, one of the Indian politicians. I think it was something Patel guy. He said, if I wanted a Chowkidar, I would go to Nepal. So if you decode that sentiment, you can look at it in a very disparaging manner, saying like, oh, you're calling me a Chowkidar. But if you decode it in a positive light, the most trusted person that is out there to guard your family and your house and your property and your assets is a Nepali guy, right? So there are Chowkidars all across India. I mean, hundreds of thousands of Nepalese work as Chowkidars.
Oh, yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And they are by far the most trusted ones, right? So what you see at the political level may not always corroborate at the people-to-people level. I mean, we Nepal wake up to everything that's tied to India and vice versa, right? We go to the Indian universities, we go to Indian pilgrimage sites, we go to Indian schools. A lot of our senior leaders went to Indian schools, hospitals. Some of them were even born there. So that level of intimacy, that level of interaction, that level of intersection is unlike any other country in the world. So
it's absolutely unique.
My thesis has always been India and Nepal share a very unique, very unparalleled or unrivaled, and an umbilical relationship, unlike any two countries in the world. But has that translated into a very cemented bond between the two countries at the policy level? Probably not. And if I may, let me show you this book, The India Way, by by the MEA, right? The thing that highlights Nepal-India relationship, because he's been in that seat for almost several years. If you go to the back of this book and look in the index, right? It's the India way. It's the vision that India sort of. The word Nepal is not even in this book. This entire book, Nepal is not even mentioned in this book, right? So that is sort of a statement. That's a major statement, at least coming from the Indian side as well. So there are these inconsistencies, there are these inaccuracies, but deep in our heart, I think the civilizational bond, this unparalleled bond, will persist, irrespective of whether they write Nepal in that book or not, whether they say something about Nepal siding with China or not. I think this bond will persist. The roti beti, I always say the bread bride, boots and blood bond with India will persist, no matter what happens. And it will transcend beyond these petty politics. It will transcend beyond these petty interests of politicians or whoever wants to. It will go beyond you and me. I think that's my personal opinion.
No, I'm sort of very, very keen that that's how it should be. But let's take a look at some of the current things. From what I understand, how much of, let's say, the resentment or whatever it is that you see against India, for very specific reasons. For instance, like you said, Rajiv Gandhi's blockade, then the Madheshi issue, the constitution, all these tangible things where India was clearly involved in some way or the other. And now, of course, the call for the return of the monarchy. Now, somebody was telling me that, oh, look, the Nepali people come to us and say, please engage. And when we do engage, we are accused of interference. How much of that is due to what is called the Big Brother syndrome, and how much of that is actually based on fact? For instance, let's start with the monarchy.
Well, the best way to put it, we have to go back to 2006. So 2006 was when it was a very critical point, a watershed moment in Nepal's history, where there was the 12-point agreement was signed in Delhi between political parties. Whether you like it or not, the evidence is that it was signed in New Delhi, right? So
Absolutely.
Delhi must have. The fact is that it was facilitated, enabled, whatever you want to call it. So then there was an uprising. Then the king relinquished power, and then in 2008, the monarchy was abolished, and it was called the 2006 Peace Accord. So for me, from a very technical point of view, I would not call that a peace accord, because a peace accord, by virtue, sort of takes in or has the participation of all the protagonists of a conflict. Everybody had acknowledged that it was a tripolar conflict between the Maoists, who were actually branded as terrorists by the state and by India, and then between the political parties and between the monarchy, right? So it was a tripolar conflict. What happened as a result was that the parties and the Maoists signed a peace treaty, and the monarchy was sidelined, right? So the conflict, unless you completely wipe out the other protagonist or overwhelm that protagonist, the remnants of that conflict will always remain. I mean, that's the theory of conflict resolution, right? So as long as there is grievance on one side of the protagonist, it always has the probability of a flare-up or a resurgence. Post 2006, there are certain Indian individuals that sort of reigned supreme or are called the architects of the 12-point agreement. Who are they? Of course, at the helm was Sonia Gandhi. They're called the S5, right? Sonia Gandhi, Shamsaran, the other one was Shiv Shankar Mukherjee was there, Sitaram Yechuri, and then to a certain level, SD Muni, right? The S5, they call the S5. So they have been, in one way or the other, part of this. So they enabled, they facilitated whatever they did, and India abandoned its twin pillar policy. But then, for me, if I may take one step forward, what happened as a result of that? If you look at the facts, if you look at what has happened, very dispassionately in terms of what has happened, Immediately after the 12-point agreement and after the multi-party democracy was installed, there were three entrants. There are three M's that entered into the Nepali sphere. One, the Maoists, who were called the terrorists, right? They entered the mainstream. Number two, the Mandarins, meaning the Chinese, came in big force. Number three, the missionaries, right? These are the three M's that entered. So the floodgates were open after 2006. And in
Mm-hmm.
some way, there are elements within the society, whether they're called the traditional forces or now they're just called like neutral forces or impartial elements in the society, do blame India for this, the three M's to enter, and the level of instability that it has wrought in the Nepali society because it was facilitated by India. Now, fast forward that to 2015 when the constitution was being drafted. The current MEA was the foreign secretary back then. He had come in as the special envoy, but the idea was that Nepal did not actually heed to some of the things that India wanted accommodated into the constitution. And then, the constitution was promulgated, then we have a blockade, right? So the blockade now creates another level of resentment because there are two things. The 1989 blockade, I think a lot of people had already forgotten about it and people had moved on. The 2000 blockade came right after the most uh, horrific earthquake, meaning we were at our weakest when we were crippling back or we were limping back to normality. And the blockade hit us like anything else. So the general populace took that as a very inhumane, policy of India. So there is that level of resentment that stems from that. But then it's not just the resentment. You have to look at the brighter side as well. Like when two countries have standing armies that are supposed to go to war, it's the armies that come together and patch us together, right? So there are these like towering tales of camaraderie, that bond, that level of trust that has been built also. But to answer your question about the resentment, it has a lot to do with a lot of the incidents from the past. So it's not just this, it's just a whole layer of things. And let me end with saying that the thing that we haven't done, both the countries, what we haven't done is whenever there are issues, what we've done is we've piled it underneath the carpet. We never actually tried to resolve it. We never, confront the issue. We try to sort of shy away from the issue. We, sort of put it underneath the carpet. And the pile of rubbish that we have piled up, accumulated over the years, has turned into a mound. So whenever you try to move forward, you step into that mound and stumble. So I think that's
Mhm.
sort of the status quo at this point.
You mentioned the army and the connection between the two forces. How badly was that hit with this Agnivir program in India?
Uh, the way I want to explain Agnivir is, first of all, it was an Indian problem statement. It did not arise from Nepal, right? So we were neither informed nor consulted. Although the defense minister Rajnath Singh was saying that we consulted about 154 or 152 different entities when we came up with this program. We were an integral part of it. We were neither consulted nor informed. So it came as a rude shock to us. Number one. Number two, I think at the policy level, there was that level of disorientation and disarray, meaning people did not know how to respond to it. Like they could not calibrate like what were the impacts, what were the implications. So there was that period of lull. And the third part of it is once they started figuring out, they started listening to what was happening in Delhi in terms of the commotion that there were protests across India about against Agnivir. The generals were
Yes.
coming out saying like this is a death knell. Uh, the chief of army staff, General Naravane's book, Four Stars of Destiny, although I don't think it has been published, he mentioned about it came out, the blue bolt out of the blue or something was his terminology he used.
Hmm.
So taking all that into account, I think the government of Nepal was trying or waiting for the dust to settle, because the Nepalese side thinks that this is very detrimental to the Indian armed services in terms of the quality of the force, in terms of the, the just the whole composition of the force, the regimentation of the force, the training, all of it. It's going to hamper. So India will eventually have to draw back from that. So I think that the Nepali side is actually waiting, and things like uh, Rahul Gandhi in the parliament saying, if we come into power, we're going to scrap it, right? So, and the fact that BJP government lost in 4 of the states that recruit the highest number of soldiers into the Indian Army, UP, Haryana, Punjab, and Maharashtra, right? The four
Mhm.
states. So we're taking all of that cumulatively and saying that eventually, eventually it will have to be reversed, but because this is not something good for the Indian armed services. And
Mhm.
the other part about it from a state point of view is we have a lot of unresolved issues, right? So Agnivir just adds another irritant issue to that. So I think the government actually wants to deal with it in a package. Also talk about the other unresolved issues, right? So I believe
Okay.
it has definitely impacted the relationship. The Gorkha regiment, I think, is down almost like 15,000. If what they're saying in the Indian media is correct, the Indian threat landscape is massive. You need the Indian war theater is very human intensive, meaning it requires a lot of manpower, and when you don't have the best manpower, it basically increases your vulnerability, right? Um,
Mhm.
One thing, if I may please add, people always ask why Gorkhas, why not anybody else? Why has the Indian Army or the armies all across the globe opted for Gorkhas? I mean, they're trying to figure out what are the attributes that make Gorkhas so special. Um, the thing with the Gorkhas is there are several things. Of course, they're loyal, they're very disciplined, they're very professional. But there's another like human built to it, the Gorkhas, that is very lucrative for any soldiering purpose. Number one, it's the lungs. Second, it's the calves, right? The calves and the lungs provide that level of endurance, meaning you can walk up and down the hills with that level of endurance, unlike the other people that are from the flatlands, right? And you can
Absolutely.
carry that amount of weight, because a soldier has to carry weight, and the weight goes on the back and around your
Mhm.
waist. So their ability to do that is far greater than the others. So combined, cumulatively, they make the best soldiers, meaning they're courageous, they can carry weight, their endurance is high, and they're very loyal and professional. So if you tell them to jump from there are all these like memes and jokes about, the Indian, the officer telling people to jump off the aircraft, and people thought that they were not going to be given, parachutes, and some were even willing to jump without parachutes. So
Mhm.
um, I think so. From that point of view, the deficiency, at least in the Indian armed services, is being felt quite a bit. The Gorkha regiments in particular are, shouting, screaming, saying that we have to resume this, or else we're going to lose this very crucial bunch of people that are very critical for the national security purpose.
Just as an aside, our conversation about Gurkhas reminded me that in my last school, we shared a sort of a volcano crater with uh, 11 Gurkha regiment camp in Jalapahar, Darjeeling. So we had a lot of interaction with them, and they epitomize what you just mentioned in terms of qualities. And I think one of the things I don't know whether you mentioned is absolute loyalty to what they do. There is no you know gray areas in their way of thinking, and I used to always admire that a lot. They're very sure of what is right and what is wrong. You know, so that's one
Yeah,
part of it. I think we're just sort of running out of time, but let's take a quick answer. Given all this friction that we just talked about, Do you see any pleasant spots as well, somewhere where we are doing well in terms of things, so that, I don't want to end this interview on a negative note. I'd rather what you just said about the relationship be able to weather all storms. Do you see some signs of that coming through?
No, absolutely. I mean, I don't think you should only look at the darker sides of things. At one given point, the complexity theory that postulates that there are a lot of good things and bad things happening at the same time, right? So you can't just focus on the dark or the negative side. There are a lot of good things happening between the two countries as well. For example, I mean, since from the security, where else can you see like five chiefs of Indian army traveling together to a country, right, to grace the Indian Army Day? That never happens. I don't think there's
Mm-hmm.
any other occasion or any other country where the five former chiefs go and visit together. Similarly, when General Bipin Rawat passed away in that horrific, tragic helicopter crash, what the Nepalese army did in honor of Bipin Rawat is quite unprecedented, actually. So during the Nepalese Army Day, when the four, I think it was five Indian Army chiefs were here as guests, they all went up to Muktinath because that was a place that General Rawat actually wanted to visit a lot, and he couldn't. So there, the former Indian chiefs of army staff and the Nepalese chiefs of army staff jointly offered a bell in honor of General Rawat at Muktinath, right? So there's a lot happening, behind all of these, like the dark clouds. There's definitely a silver lining. The other part is about economics. So economically, we are very tied to India. Although it's not highlighted, the economic contribution that Nepal makes, all despite its size, is astronomical. Because if I can quickly, in terms of trade volume, we're one of the highest. In terms of remittance provided to the Indian economy, we're in the top 10, right? But in actual numbers, we're in top five, both in terms of trade and in terms of remittance. Tourism, you do not consider us to be tourists because we cross the border, just on a daily basis. Hundreds of thousands of people actually cross the border just to get their sugar or their saris or whatever, right? So that's not counted because only the visas are counted. Pilgrimage, hundreds of thousands of people travel to India. Shopping, medical, education, combine all of that cumulatively, Nepal is the unrivaled contributor to the Indian economy, both in terms of labor, in terms of trade, and also, if you let's not forget, Nepal is the top destination for people from the lower strata of society, especially in UP and Bihar, that come and work in Nepal. We're not a very developed country, but things like barbers, like plumbers, electricians, tile
Mm-hmm.
workers, bricklayers, you name it. The lowest strata of the upper and the northern belt of India comes to work in Nepal. And similarly, if you look at the western side of Nepal, a large population of the western side of Nepal goes into India in one form or the other to seek employment. So there's this mutual bond that still exists. So it's not just the dark side, or it's not just the dark side. What I was unable to sort of prescribe during my Chanakya speech was, India during the Modi government is very big on slogans, like Atmanirbhar Bharat, Vikasit Bharat, all of this. Like they're big on that. One of the things that I wanted to prescribe was saying your neighborhood policy has almost gone to a neighborhood lost policy. So you need to reconfigure that, recalibrate that. And perhaps a Shaurya Sakti, a theme under Shaurya Sakti would be maybe apt, which basically said South Asia is just like our planetary system. India is the sun in the middle, whereby all the smaller uh, planets, which are the smaller countries, orbit around the sun, right? In their own
Right.
orbits, closer or further, right? But all orbit around India. Independent, free, and satisfied. And the warmth that India can radiate is the thing that will serve as the linchpin for all of these countries to gravitate towards India. So focus on the warmth, not the heat. It should be devoid of heat, but full of warmth. If India can do that, I think the neighborhood is obviously India by far is the
Let's hope the
largest.
people who can make this happen are listening in to this particular conversation. On that note,
I hope.
we've already gone ahead of time. So thank you so very much. And I look forward to having you on our show again.
Thank you so much, Ramanandaji. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That was Chiran Jung Thapa, security specialist from Nepal, and a person known for speaking his own mind, explaining to us the dynamics of the India-Nepal relationship. I do hope you found this particular edition of The Gist interesting, and I look forward to having you with us again. Till then, this is Ramananda Sengupta signing out.